All right. Halloween is just around the corner. Do you know how to talk about Halloween in English? If you don't, this lesson's for you. I'm going to teach you vocabulary, grammar structures, and pronunciation ideas that you need to successfully talk about Halloween if you're ever in a situation where you need to talk about Halloween. All right, so grab a notebook, get ready to take some notes, and let's dive right into how to talk about Halloween in English as an ESL student. So, a natural first place to start talking about Halloween is talking about the myths or the mythology behind Halloween. And if you don't really understand what a myth is, that's okay. A myth is a story that we have collectively as a culture that allows us to explain things that we don't really understand or we don't really know. We also often use this word to talk about older religions that have fallen out of practice. So we often talk about like Roman mythology, although at the time that would have been Roman religious ideology. Myth comes from interesting places sometimes, and you can kind of see the origin of myth sometimes. So, for example, take a look at this thing. Okay. What would you maybe assume this is if you had to make a guess? Okay. One of the things that early people, especially in Roman and Greek cultures, may have assumed this was some sort of gigantic skull with an eye or a single eye right in the center. That particular mythological creature is called a Cyclops, the one eyed giant in Roman mythology. And you can kind of see where this comes from if you were to find an object like that. However, that's an elephant skull. And while elephants were in Asia and Africa, their skulls and body parts very likely would have made it into Roman culture and Roman areas. And an interpretation or uh, a guess about what this thing might be would have arisen from seeing this skull in person. And so this is where mythology starts. Let's take dragons as another example. So dragons are one of those mythological creatures that exists in almost every culture. They are in Chinese culture, they're in Thai culture, they flow through English and British culture. They are ubiquitous. That's one of the words that I taught this week. It means that they are throughout. Every culture has some sort of dragon, or almost every culture has some sort of dragon within their culture. And we can kind of make an interpretation, remember that word, to guess at where something came from, and we can kind of make an interpretation about where dragons might have come from. Dinosaur fossils, okay, so a fossil, if you don't know this word, is a word that means a bone of a animal that has been encased in rock and they are preserved over time. They carry through time. Dinosaur fossils are all over the world. You find them everywhere throughout the world. And it would be very easy to make that interpretation about dinosaur fossils that they were some sort of large monster, like a sea monster or a dragon or something. And so it's very easy to see where these mythological creatures and these mythological ideas come from. Okay, so if you want to use the word myth and mythological creature correctly, this has to be something that is not real. So take this animal, for example. Do you know what that animal is? This is a real animal. It's a animal that exists in Australia and it's called a platypus. Okay. It is a very strange animal. It is a very odd animal and a very unique animal, but it's a real animal. And so you would not refer to a platypus as being a mythological creature. It is a real creature. A dragon, on the other hand, is a mythological creature. There is no known evidence or no proof of dragons, so we can call it a mythological creature. And some other mythological creatures that are really common in English language, and it would be a really good idea to know these pieces of vocabulary, are Bigfoot, Sasquatch, and Yetis. And these are all basically the same thing. They are a large hominid, uh, like us, Homo something. They are a species of people almost, or they're a large ape, depending on the type of description that's being made. And they inhabit. Okay? Inhabit is a word that means they live in. So they live in forests in North America and the Himalayas and even South America. There is no known evidence of Bigfoot that has been proven. There's no real evidence of Bigfoot that's been proven, but every once in a while you hear of a hoax. Hoax is a word that means people are intentionally trying to fool you, or they're intentionally trying to trick you into believing something. So there's a lot of hoaxes about Bigfoot. People come and they wear Bigfoot shaped shoes, or they wear a Bigfoot coat and they film themselves, or they leave a little bit of hair from one of these creatures somewhere where that it's going to be found. But none of this evidence has ever been proved to be true. It's always circumstantial. Okay, circumstantial is another really good word, especially if you're studying IELTS or something. These kind of words really push your IELTS score or any of the English speaking proficiency tests. Circumstantial, though, is a word that means you don't have evidence. There's no proof of this thing. So all of this Bigfoot evidence is circumstantial. It's a mythical creature. It may exist. I'm open to the possibility that it exists, but probably not. If we're being realistic, it probably does not exist. Okay, so a really good practice activity here would be to talk about a mythological creature from your culture. And if you wanted to send me a video, I'd be happy to kind of review some of these things in a follow up lesson and see how you've used some of that vocabulary. So try to use myth, try to use evidence, try to use circumstantial. These are all really good words that you can use to talk about mythological creatures. Let's get back on topic. We got a little bit off topic there. Halloween. That's our topic. How do you talk about Halloween? All right, there's some really specialized vocabulary that you might need to talk about Halloween. One is Halloween. It's a holiday where people, children especially, dress up in costumes. And these costumes can be anything. They can be robots or they can be princesses. But often one of the main themes of Halloween is spooky horror based themes. And so you often get costumes that represent some of the mythology or some of the monsters that you find in Western mythology. So let's talk about some of these. A vampire is a mythological creature that sucks blood. Okay, so that's a vampire. A mummy is a dead person that has been resurrected or brought back to life. But a mummy comes specifically from Egypt and it's wrapped in a swaddle or a cloth that is usually made of linen. And so that's a mummy. This is a little bit different than a zombie, although, to be honest, they're basically the same thing. They are a resurrected dead person who has come back to life. Zombies are not wrapped, but basically they do the same thing. They are undead. So this is a very common Halloween costume as well. Ghosts are very typical Halloween costumes, and a ghost is, again, kind of the same thing. It's a dead person that's inhabiting a spirit form, or it is like floating in the air. And often these costumes are really simple. And so you'll see kids grabbing mom and dad's bed sheets, cutting a couple of eyes in it, and there you go. You have a ghost. It's a very effective but lazy costume for children on Halloween. One of probably the most important cultural references for Halloween is the idea of pumpkins and jack-o'-lanterns. Okay, so a pumpkin is a fruit. It is a orange thing that you can eat. It's in pie. A jack-o'-lantern, on the other hand, is a pumpkin that has been carved with some sort of imagery, usually a scary face. And so it would be incorrect in English to say people decorate their house with pumpkins on Halloween. They do. Some people put pumpkins out that haven't been carved, but it's probably more correct to say people place a jack o' lantern on their doorstep at Halloween. And the kids come in and trick or treat. Okay, this is another good piece of vocabulary that means kids go out as part of this holiday and they collect candy. And it comes from kind of an old idea where when I was a kid, it was trick or treat. You would give us a treat, or there would be some sort of trick played, usually like toilet papering a house or other kind of pranks and jokes that kids would play on houses that didn't give out candy. This has fallen out of practice. You don't see so many tricks anymore, but the idea or the vocabulary has stuck around. And so kids will go door to door and they will yell trick or treat. One of the things that I found really interesting growing up was the story of Lord Byron, Percy Shelley, and Mary Shelley. And they were responsible for some of the modern horror genre in English literature. And if you are interested in studying English literature, this this old style horror genre makes for some fantastic literature. It used to be that horror was a genuine literary genre, and it used to be very, very good. I'm not saying it isn't now, but it is. It was particularly good 100 years ago. And one of the interesting stories that I remember from university was the story of Lord Byron, Percy Shelley, and Mary Shelley. They basically were on holiday together and they got stuck because of a period of inclement weather. And they ended up having a personal contest about who could write the best horror story. Well, the result of that was some pretty fantastic literature. So, The Vampire was the story that later inspired Bram Stoker's Dracula. Mary Shelley, of course, wrote Frankenstein, which has seen multiple iterations in film and media and has kind of passed into like the common collective knowledge in a very kind of real and visceral way. And I just found this story about these three authors creating a literary genre to themselves because they were stuck in a period of bad weather to be very inspiring and very interesting and a very high point of English literary tradition. All right, so let's take a little bit of a review. So, if you want to talk about Halloween, you need some of that vocabulary. Go back, study these things: skeleton, zombie, monster, gargoyle, vampire. There's a lot of vocabulary around talking about Halloween, but even having a few simple pieces will really kind of help you explain yourself in English if you have to talk about Halloween, especially some of the verbs and the things that people do on Halloween. So, kids typically carve a pumpkin into a jack o' lantern before Halloween. They go trick or treating. They dress up in different costumes. They collect candy. And they'll help you speak about a subject that you may not be so comfortable speaking about. So, as I mentioned earlier, if you would like to send me a video, I'm going to selectively take some of these videos and I will review them and critique them. This is a really good opportunity for you to get some critique on your English. So, feel free to send me this video of you explaining mythological creatures in your country or your tradition. And I will give you a little bit of video feedback on it and post it in a upcoming video. Thank you very much. I'm Ryan. This is English Learning Adventures. If you like what I do, hit that subscribe button. It really helps me out and it helps me build a following, and I really appreciate it.